Hi, my name's Tom Foley. I'm one half of production duo Brunelle. I'm here today at DBS Music Bristol, and I'm going to run through our contribution and creative process in Anne-Marie's Alarm. So, hi, yeah, I'm Tom Foley in one half of a production duo called Brunelle. And we've worked with likes of Anne-Marie, Rudimental, Tom Walker, Example, there's always one. And yeah, I'm here to talk today about our contribution and the creative process we went through when doing Anne-Marie's track Alarm, which was back in 2016 now. So I guess I'll give you a bit of context about myself and where I started. Sort of when I was growing up, basically there wasn't really any other option. If I wanted to get involved in music, I had to sort of learn how to play an instrument really, or join a band. I feel like nowadays it's sort of changed quite a lot because anyone can go onto YouTube and get tutorials, and as long as you've got like a laptop and a copy of Logic, you can sort of get straight into music tech. But for me, it was my only real way into that was joining bands and learning to play instruments and stuff, which I was never really that good at. I was sort of a jack of all trades, master of none really. But nevertheless, I went to music college, did music tech, and that really opened up sort of my love of everything electronic music, and I was sort of obviously at the age where I started to go out and go to clubs and DJ, and that really got me into dance music, and it just sort of opened my world to all sorts of different music and that people were bringing to the table at college. Obviously you get a big mix, don't you, of everything. And that was sort of like really set me off for music production. And so from there, as soon as I sort of like got the basics under my belt, I just sort of practiced as much as I could and tried to create as many opportunities for myself as possible. And I literally just sort of said yes to most things. I sort of, you've got to sort of know your worth to a certain point, because there's a fine line between sort of doing things for like experience. If you're getting fleeced, then it's not exactly worth it. But I tried to do as much as I could. If it was just recording like a band that I was in, or other friends' bands, or like I even did some stuff for a theatre company, like producing my own stuff and DJing out. And I think I realised that quickly, having put in a lot of effort into stuff in the studio, I realised that I had to put an equal amount of effort into things outside of that to network and meet people and collaborate, because they both go hand in hand. You need to be able to sort of have both parts of that for your music to ever get out of the studio and be heard by everyone else. So I sort of did that for as long as I could in Bristol, and eventually it led to me and Shane, the guy that I work with in Brunelle, writing a bunch of tracks together, and eventually we sort of networked our way to our known manager, who basically gave us a little test. When we first met him, he sort of said, have a go at some additional production on this track, have a go at a remix for him. I think he just wanted to see if we were any good. And we did that, we passed it. We sort of like, he took us on, and eventually we ended up working for him. Sort of when we first started, it was mainly as songwriters and producers, sort of like early ideas guys, more so than finishers. And we ended up joining his sort of in-house studio team for his record label in London called 37 Adventures. And we were basically the sort of go-to guys. Anytime they had a new act coming through, they would give us a day or a couple of days in the studio with whoever it was to try and work with them, trying to get some demos up together, try and get what we could out of them. We sort of advertised ourselves to our manager as like, because we had experience, we played in bands and we'd done the electronic stuff, DJ'd, and we sort of thought that we had a pretty wide variety of stuff. So we sort of said we could do anything basically, and which wasn't necessarily strictly true, but I think you sort of got to big yourself up a little bit. So yeah, we worked with him in the studio in London for a couple of, about a year, I suppose, and just having all these artists come through. And one of the first ones that came through was a girl called Jones. I don't know if any of you heard of her, but she's like an amazing singer, brilliant writer. She's got an album, maybe 2 now. But we basically, one of the first sessions we did was with her, and we wrote a song called Deep, which ended up being her first single and sort of launched her career. And that was really cool for us because at the time we'd never done anything outside of Bristol. Everything was sort of quite localised and only really heard to like your mates or the few people that you're playing to in a club. And then for us to be able to do something in London with a label, and it all felt quite big time. And the record then got finished off by a guy called Roddy McDonald, who basically does all the production for the XX. So that was a really cool step for us. It gave us a lot of confidence, and sort of like pushed us on, kept on going. And we kept on doing that with lots of different artists. Anyone that got put in front of us, we tried to sort of get a track with. And that was like massive experience for us to sort of just be in, our manager calls it like your sort of bedside manners, where you just got to like having the technical skills to do one thing on the like the computer side of things, and then equally having the social side to be able to communicate with artists and try and get what you want or what they want from you. Sort of, again, it goes hand in hand, like having the social, like the networking side of things outside of the studio. So all of these things were helping build up a sort of like a broader understanding of how everything works. And as we sort of we were getting a few releases, we ended up looking for a publishing deal. So we took all the songs that we had written for all these people and a couple of ideas that we had done for ourselves, but we weren't really like an artist yet. It was just writing for other people. But we took all these things and shopped them around, and eventually got a deal with Universal Music. And from that, we sort of decided that we were going to put a bit more attention into writing our own stuff. And we wrote a couple of instrumentals, which was strange because everything that we'd done was with singers, and then when it came to, and it was always for the singer, so when it came to us writing our own stuff, we sort of didn't really have an idea of what we sounded like because we'd never had to focus on ourselves. So we sort of put our heads together and just came up with and just went with whatever we felt was right, and whatever came out, came out. And we didn't use a singer to come into the session initially, or any of the sessions initially, just to sort of, we just wanted to get the groundwork done of like how we sounded, what sort of the instrumentation was going to be like, where we sat on the sort of genre scale. But we both really, really like working with vocals. So we had all these vocals from different sessions that we basically sort of bent and twisted and stretched and molded to sort of fit whatever we were writing, even though it was from other random sets, just sort of old school sort of sampling in a way. And yeah, so we released 2 tracks. One got picked up by a French label, and they put it on a compilation, which was, you know, a good thing for us at the time, where it was better than us just sort of putting something out on SoundCloud. It had a little bit of a push behind it. And then the second one was a song called Fabric, which we gave to our publishers, and it got used on a boohoo.com advert straight away. So that was really cool for us. It was, yeah, that was nuts hearing it on TV. So everything felt like it was going in the right direction. We were sort of, everything that we were doing, we were gaining confidence and things were clicking, and obviously people were liking the stuff that we were doing. So initially that gave us a lot of confidence to sort of stick at it. But yeah, hearing the song on the advert was really strange. We sort of got a big list of when the track was going to be on and what channel, and we'd like sit there and put it on at like 1:03, and then switch to look down the list and be like, oh, it's going to be on in 5 minutes on another channel, and go onto there. So it sounds a bit sad, but it was quite exciting at the time. Anyway, once those 2 tracks were out there, it was sort of like the launch of us, and that got picked up by a guy called Amira Moore, who is the lead producer in Rudimental, and he heard the 2 tracks and he liked what he heard, and he then invited us in to work with him for the project that they're doing with Anne-Marie. So that's how we got to this point. So from this point, I guess I'll talk to you. I'm going to go through the sort of the creative process of from when we got the demo, or in fact, I'm going to go through when we got there from the day and talk to you exactly how the process went down, and go through the project and sort of show you what we did along the way there. And hopefully you'll be able to sort of take a bit of it and maybe use some of the processes in your own stuff, but who knows. So basically, like I said, Amir had picked up our tracks, liked what he'd heard, and invited us down. So we went down and we had 2 days in the studio. His studio is called Major Tom's in Shoreditch in London, and luckily it was only around the corner from where we were working at the time. And we went up, didn't really have a clue what to expect. It was it felt like a massive leap for us from going from just sort of this little studio sessions with up and coming artists to suddenly working with a big pop star, basically. But nevertheless, we sort of just had to go with it. And we sat down with him and he played him basically everything that we had done. And he literally just sat and gave us feedback on every single bit of music that we had done, which was like unbelievable experience for us, because this is someone that's obviously had success even before Rudimental, producing for other people and stuff, and still is smashing it now. So for him to go through everything and give us some advice was really, really cool. Most of the stuff he was saying to us was about being confident in your melody making and simplifying. Like everything that we had, I think we'd sort of maybe overthought out a bit too much, and we tried to put a lot into stuff. And he was basically saying, once you've got like that vocal or you've got that hook, then make sure you put it in there like in bold and keep it simple and make sure that that is the focus, and you've got nothing else around it too much is going to overcomplicate you just focusing on that one thing. So that was a really, really useful bit of advice for us, and it's always stuck with us, because I think everyone can be a bit guilty of sort of overdoing stuff when they're working on things and trying to put extra bits in that aren't necessarily needed. So yeah, that was great for us, going for everything. And then he sort of went on to the brief of the tracks that we were going to be working on. Like I said, we had 2 days and there was 2 tracks that we worked on. So we were pretty up against it time-wise, which in a way I think we turned into a positive, because you don't have enough time to sort of sit and contemplate what you're doing, if what you're doing is 100% right. But you just go with it, and if you've got a vibe, then you sort of have to just go with your gut, which I think, down the road, looking back at it, is a huge lesson to have learned, and it's something that we still do now in our practice when we're going through writing music. So he basically sat us down. Obviously, the brief was that it had to be a pop record, a big pop record. She was, a pop star, so it's got to fit on the radio, it's got to sound good on the radio, it's got to be big and bold and bright. But he, as much as he sort of gave us that information, he also said to us, he's brought us in there for the fact that he's listened to our music, which is a little more left field. And he wanted to bring that into this big pop production. So just to give it an edge, I guess, like the demo and the tracks were written, and then he needed something to give it an edge. So I think it's a common practice in a lot of pop music where they take a track that's been written by a songwriter and an artist, and it's all pretty much bare, and then they'll have a little scout around, find some really cool, interesting production, and then try and use a bit of that in the tracks by getting people in. And it also gives people like me and Shane really good experience. So I guess I'll play you the 2 tracks that he had heard originally, and that will give you a bit of context as to sort of what we were sounding like at the time. So this is the first one we released, called Chemistry. So it was the first record that we put out, which ended up on this compilation in France. And then the second one is this one called Fabric, which ended up on the TV advert. And that was the second one. So they're both sort of a bit left field. We kind of ended up structuring everything almost like a pop song with verses and pre-choruses and choruses, but they're not pop songs. But that was sort of the only thing that we knew really, was how to structure a song in that way, or like a dance record. So it was somewhere in between, and then they're both at different tempos, different kind of, we weren't really sure what we sort of sounded like, but the sort of the overall main parts of both of those is the vocal chops that we were using, and that was we knew that that's what we were good at using, and we felt like it had a good sound to it. We felt like, I think it's got like a natural advantage if you can create a melody out of a vocal, just because your ears are sort of designed to pick up human voices naturally. So anytime you can create a melody out of a vocal, I think it just gives it that extra bit of, not sure what the word is, but you pick it up more easily, I think, than just having it on a synth or a guitar or whatever, just because there's that human element to it. So that was like our sort of signature sound that we were hoping to use. And when we were with him here, he basically said that was like paramount. He was like, do exactly what you want with these tracks. He said, don't be afraid to offend anyone and like delete anything. So just get rid of anything you want. Anything you don't like, get rid of it. Anything you do like, keep. But just make sure you do what's like true to your sound, which is a bit difficult for us because we weren't really that sure on where we were at the time. But we decided, because we only got a couple of days, that we were going to try and focus on making sure that there was something that we added to the track that was too good to take out when it finally got like produced by Amir and Steve Mack, who wrote the song. So we focused on like the instrumentation, we focused on like hooks especially, rhythms, and tried to, like, in like broad brushstrokes, tried to sort of get as much as we could of us into that, and like I said, focus on the key parts that were going to be listened to and were hopefully going to be too good that they couldn't remove at the end of it. You would miss those parts if they were taken out, rather than focusing on. We weren't there to sort of polish up a track that's already been half produced. We were there for the ideas that we could cut to put onto the track, rather than sort of, you know, tidying anything up. So we didn't want to do anything too small. We didn't want to concentrate too long on little tiny bits and pieces like the sound of a snare drum and all that. We just wanted to sort of put in big hooks and big sounds that would represent us. So having a short deadline actually was quite an advantage in that respect, because once we got a vibe, it was just like focusing on that and making decisions quickly. So I guess what I'll do is I'll play you the original Alarm demo that we got given on the day, and then I can start going through what we did from that point onwards. So yeah, the song was written with Anne-Marie and a guy called Steve Mack. And if you've never heard of Steve Mack, he's basically like the British Max Martin. He's written everything, like so many pop songs, all the way back to like the early 90s. And he's just got like an unbelievable formula. Clearly, it works. And he just, every genre, he bangs them out. And yeah, so he's written this with her, and this is what we got originally to start off with. So.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you. I'm focused now. I know what's going on in your head, yeah. I know what's happened here in our bed, yeah. Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she calling, so what the fuck? I should've known that she stays a cheater. So here we are. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him, no. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the pitch, yeah. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. And there goes the alarm. I let it go. My girls will tell me I told you so, but I was so intrigued by your style, boy. I always been a sucker for a wild boy. I'm better than this, I know my worth. I might be getting what I deserve, but I ain't sticking around for the rerun. What's done is done. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him, no. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the pitch, yeah. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. And there goes the alarm. Fire, man down, one fool, one liar. Ring, ring, trust gone missing. House on fire, house on fire. Bang, bang, two shot fire. Man down, one fool, one liar. Ring, ring, trust gone missing. House on fire. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him, no. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now he got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now he got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the pitch, yeah. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. And there goes the alarm. 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 There goes the alarm.
So that's the original demo that we got given, and obviously it's quite a lot different to how it ended up turning out. And so we had all the parts, and they said, you know, get rid of anything you don't want. So straight away, there was quite a lot that we didn't really like about it at all. And as you can see, straight away, we didn't really get very far into the track. You know, we literally focused on just doing like a part for the verse, a part for the sort of pre-chorus, and then a part for the drop. And we knew that it was always going to be taken on by the other guys that were going to be finishing the production off. So we didn't bother trying to sort of string out a whole structure and do everything. We just focused on getting these little bits right. So yeah, so straight away we sort of deleted everything that we didn't want, and there was, like I said, there's quite a lot that we didn't really like. And I guess I'll break it down into the sections that we were working on and sort of A-B between the two. So this was Steve's intro, and then I'll play ours afterwards.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you, I'm focused now. I know what's going on in your head, yeah. I know what's happened here in our bed, yeah. Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she calling, so what the fuck? I should've known that she stays a cheater. So here we are.
So the whole thing is pretty bare. This one, it was, you know, there's not a lot to it at all. Straight away, we didn't really like the sort of the little glitchy synth. We just sort of kind of found it a bit irritating. And at the time, Lean On by Major Lazer was like the biggest song in the world. And there's a lot of people using mallets and stuff, so we were like, right, let's try and make something similar to that. So that was like our first thing. We wanted to redo the main synth sound. So this is our version.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you, I'm focused now. I know what's going on in your head, yeah. I know what's happened here in our bed, yeah. Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she calling, so what the fuck? I should've known that she stays a cheater. So here we are.
So yeah, so basically that was like our first intention, replace that sound. We wanted something that sounded a bit fuller. The glitchy sound just sounded a bit sort of tinny and weak in our opinion, so we wanted something that was fuller, could fill up the space a bit more. We wanted to try and make it obviously sound as like big a production as we could in the time that we had. And in hindsight, looking back at some of the stuff that we put in, it was probably, again, overdoing it, but it's in there. So yeah, this is just a mallet sound. It was on Monopoly, the Korg Monopoly. The one thing about it that I sort of wish we had done now is, if you notice on Steve's version, it's like the rhythm has got like the delay on the actual little glitchy synth, and we didn't do that. We didn't sort of recreate that, and I actually think that at least the sound I don't like, but the rhythm with the delay on it is actually, it does push it on a bit more. Just having that little tiny delay on, I think actually ours could have done with that, thinking about it now. And then we liked the sort of the rhythm of the drums and the sort of the filtered drums that they had going on, in that we didn't want to change any rhythms or anything there. We think that was cool, but we just sort of changed the sounds again and put in an 808 and changed the kick and put in this like cowbell and filtered snare sound. And so we kept that mostly the same. We had like a little, like this sort of stuff I was saying about trying to fill things up was probably unnecessary. It was just like a little white noisy. And when you actually listen to it, it's not really adding anything.
Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she could.
Tiny little bits in the background. It's just sort of things that we're just trying as much as we could on the day to sort of fill up the space and make it sound as big as possible. The main things that we were interested in doing on the intro was we've got these little sort of vocal parts, these little vocal stabs that that come in every sort of 4 bars, 4, 8 bars, just as like little bits of sort of ear candy that when you're as a listener, if you know every sort of, you want to be reminded or be pushed on to listen to the next 4 bars or 8 bars. So if there's something that can sort of draw you in at the end of that, you're not necessarily going to be listening out for it, but just something that catches your ear, even if you're not, like I said, listening for it. It's something that just gets your ear and keeps you wanting to listen on. So these were from Exhale, I think, just these little vocal parts. And they just sort of, just right at the end of each phrase sort of thing, it's got just a little bit of sparkle that keeps you interested, I think.
I smell her on you. I'm focused now. I know what's going on.
And like I said, you're not really listening out for it, but they come in every 4 bars, and then this one
I know what's happened here in our bed.
was like a reverse thing that we sort of messed around with, which I think it must be her vocal, I think, doing that. And it's just, yeah, I think it's just reversed and sort of distorted, but it adds like a cool little rhythm, a little sound, again, just to keep you interested. We've got little bits and pieces like at the start of the bar, when the drums come in, little finger cymbal. Again, just for these sort of like bright little, because the whole thing's quite filtered, and because we got rid of that glitchy synth, it was like, you know, a lot more down the low register. So for us, putting in like these little the vocal parts and the high cymbal, just to sort of balance the whole thing out so it wasn't too deep and muddy with 808s and stuff going on all the time. And that was pretty much it. We wanted to get a little bit of us in there. And then I think the vocals, what have we got? Yeah, we had a dry vocal.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you.
And then the effect.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you.
So we didn't really have to touch any of that, and we weren't really going to be looking at changing any of the structure or anything, so that was fine. You know, the vocals are actually, you know, who I guess Steve Mack has done them, and we got them, and they're like amazingly well produced and comped in the first place, so there was no worries there. And then, so yeah, moving on to the pre-chorus. I'll do the same thing again, an A-B between the two.
Alarm ringing in my head, like somebody said, don't you trust him? No. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the pitch, yeah. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. And there goes the alarm.
So yeah, a bit more gets added to his. You know, they got the drum build up and a few more like higher little bits and pieces, synths and stuff going on. And again, we just wanted to make ours have a sort of a bigger impact, because it's, I don't know, the whole thing, the whole demo feels quite tame, and it doesn't really sort of like have that big build. And a lot of the stuff that we had produced up to that point for ourselves was dance music. So everything that I knew about dance music, because you know, it was all to do with like peaks and troughs and building things up and like really getting it hyped. And so I think we just took that and tried to put it into a pop production, basically. So straight away, I think we've added an extra bit. I think the mallet sound changes just to sort of go, I think there's less filter on it, or So yeah, that opens up a little bit, just to get that bit of extra brightness, so it feels like the track's progressing. We've added just literally root notes, and then I think in the second half the rhythm builds up to sort of again create that big build going into the drop and the higher octave. Everything's quite heavily sidechained on the whole project as well. Again, I guess that's probably just from our experience in dance music, where everything was quite heavily sidechained. So again, we just took what we knew without really thinking about it. We've got a big pad that comes in. Again, so it sort of fills out what was quite a bare rhythm just with a mallet going on. It fills that space in between, and the same with the string. Stays on the same note. Again, it's like a dance thing, you know, you hear it in a lot of house music when they bring in a string and on like the build up to something, just on the one note. So we weren't trying to think outside of our comfort zone, knowing that we were working on a pop track. It was just taking what we had done always and trying to put it into this. This one, again, was like a saw wave, really bright sound, just to sort of get the sort of like excitement into the track. In a way, that was kind of like a nod to the glitchy sound that we had dropped out, I think, just to sort of bring a bit of that back in, but we didn't necessarily want it all the way from the start. Then, as we build up into the second half of everything at the synths, we've got a bass. What's this? I think that's a vocal. So yeah, we've got a bass that comes in halfway through. One of them's just the sub part. One with the top. Oops. Just to get that to cut through a bit in the mix, because there's quite a lot that comes in at once, really. So adding that top part to the bass just to sort of get the cut in there. This, I think, is a vocal. But again, it was just to sort of like build up some sort of like hype going into the drop. And then the same with the drums. It was all about, and the effects that we've got. It was all about sort of getting it really, really hyped up and building really nicely. So we've got quite a lot of effects going into the track straight away. We've got like a glass sound and a massive, big, like straight out of a Vengeance dance pack or something into that.
And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head, like somebody's.
And then just some odd bits and pieces, like I think that's a door shutting that we sampled.
Don't you trust him? No, texting from his ex.
A little snare that does the same sort of rhythm again, just to sort of back up what we already had in there, but make it brighter. And then I think this is some claps that come in again, just to sort of it, doubles up the rhythm, makes it feel like it's going somewhere. And the same with the effects. We've got a lot of effects going out the other end where it really builds. So that coming in there just sort of like really pushes it along.
Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the picture. There goes the alarm.
and then the same with all these, you know, big swell up to the end to get to the final point there. And I think from the original stems, obviously we used the vocals. There's some of the effects that were already in there. So they had the same idea, you know. Same sort of thing. And was there guitar in this bit? Oh, no. No, I don't think so. But yeah, so it was all about just sort of like getting that big build, trying to use what we knew from dance music to work our way into a pop chorus. And then onto the chorus, which is sort of, you know, the big part where it changes. This is Steve's version. So straight away, it's like we really didn't like sort of like the kick on the one the whole way through at like 146 BPM. It just it's almost like sort of some sort of like hard house or something. And there's a big guitar hook which we didn't really feel like was that strong. We hated the hi-hats, and I don't know, it just sort of didn't really go anywhere. It felt like it didn't have like a big enough impact. And again, going back to sort of our experience with dance music and stuff, when I was first into production, you know, I've done sort of all sorts, but like at one point I was like making dubstep, and so around 140 BPM I was like, okay, like we could try something like that, and kind of basically we decided we're going to half the time and put in a more of a sort of dubstep kind of beat and like sort of like some trappy hats, and this is our version. So yeah, you know, it's completely different to their chorus, completely. And you know, for us it felt right because, you know, they've got the sort of the halftime kick and snare. Even in the original, you know, it's got that feel to it. So it just felt odd to jump from that to a kick on the one at 146 BPM, just like thumping at you. So it just felt like a natural progression for us to go into this sort of thing. And again, we kept the same mallet sound, but I think it progresses again slightly, I think. So again, just I think it maybe gets a slightly bit brighter again on the filter. A bass that follows the root of everything there. This hook, this sort of bright soul synth. That keeps going to keep that brightness going, the continuity going in from the pre-chorus. We've got a little ARP. Again, it's sort of like for the high-end stuff, because there's a lot of bass going on. You kind of need to balance it out somewhere. So. And again, there's just those little things that sort of like, when it gets to the high register stuff, you do sort of pick up on it a little bit. But the main focus, like I said, we didn't have a lot of time, so the main focus was getting a beat right, which didn't take that long, to be fair. It felt pretty natural to just go here, and it's pretty simple. So yeah, we just got a. just a really simple beat. The hats took a little while to program, I guess, and just a big clap on every third. And in fact, I think we used their kick maybe from the actual project, maybe not. But yeah, so just like a really basic beat. And then it was all about trying to get a hook. Like I said, we wanted to get something that was too good to take out. So we thought by one, changing the rhythm of everything. The instrumentation was one thing, and they could take it or leave it. But changing the rhythm of the chorus, suddenly if you listen to it with a different rhythm entirely in the chorus, and then you went back to the other one, you might miss it if it was better than the other one. You know what I mean? And the same with the hook. We had like the guitar hook that Steve had in there. We took out and we replaced it with our own one. And we believed that it was better. So again, we went back to what we knew best, and that was cutting up vocals and sampling the vocals. So we've got a couple of bits and pieces I'll go through.
Now we got that.
So it's just, in fact, let me do these ones first. So a couple of them are from Exhale on Contact. These. So that's two exhales like working together combined. One of them we just played in the notes, and one of them's from like the loops part of Exhale. I guess you've probably used Exhale. Some of you used it, but it's just like a vocal synthesizer. They've got loads of sample vocals, and you can manipulate them in the thing itself, and it's really cool. I think we got it when it first came out, and I think you hear it now in like almost every other pop song. So it's kind of lost its shine a little bit for us. We don't tend to go there anymore. But at the time, it was like a vocal synth where we could mess around with vocals was like perfect for us. So that was like the main hook. And at the time, we had Amir was sort of just sat behind us. He just sat in the corner and on his laptop and was just sort of keeping an ear out for anything. And I remember at the time we were fiddling around with stuff, and I think we'd done this little hook. And straight away he was like, "That's cool." So I was like, "Right, okay, keep that in then." And we just basically worked everything around that. So from that point, just cutting up some of her vocals to try and get the continuity from the actual track that we're producing and the vocal samples that we're putting in as extras. We did a couple of bits and pieces.
Now we got that.
Obviously her vocal, just to sort of,
Same way that they.
just to get a bit of her voice in the drop. And then these ones are just sound shifted either up or down, so there's like nothing technical about it, really. And the same for this, just going up an octave, I think. And then all together, obviously to make up the whole hook.
Now we got that.
So yeah, it all sort of, hopefully, it all works together, and we try to allow enough space for each of the sounds to have their own little bit to shine. And yeah, so that was basically it. And I think from the top, did we take any of that? Yeah, there's just her vocal in the middle, and the same again with the effects. But we've left everything pretty dry with everything else. Like I'm not going to go through with you on here because there's a few bits that have got stuff on, but it's all just your sort of EQs and compressors mainly, and like reverbs and delays. But like I said before, we weren't there to make the whole thing sound amazing and like super tight and professional. We were there just to sort of put in these ideas. So half the stuff I've done on here, looking at back when I've opened up the project since, I've probably thinking like, what was I thinking there? You know what I mean? There's loads of stuff where the chain's just all backwards, but at the time it was just like, right, let's just get loads of ideas, chuck it all in, and see how it sounds. And obviously, once you got the idea, we tried to make sure that those key highlights, the key things were that we're focusing on were highlighted. So the hook in the chorus, the rhythm in the chorus, and like the instrumentation for us on the sort of deeper instrumentation, get rid of that main synth was quite a big one as well. So that's basically the process that we had. And like I said, we didn't have to do the entire track. We probably ran out of time by this point. But once we got an idea, we just really tried to make sure that everything had its say in the song. And I'll go on briefly to show you another one that we've done the day after called Breathe and Fire, and quickly talk about that because it's the same. It was exactly the same thing. We had the demo given to us, and it was written, I think, by Steve Mack and Anne-Marie. But this one was a little bit different because Amir had already started work on the production. So for us, when he sort of said, you know, get rid of anything you don't like, I was kind of like, wow, it all sounds pretty good to me. So there wasn't that much we wanted to take away. But again, we went in with the same attitude that it wasn't necessarily about trying to make his production better. It was about making sure that our parts that we put in it would stand out and would be too good to get rid of. So I'll just play you a little clip. So this is the demo of Breathe and Fire.
We can run, chase after those sunsets, it's alright. And we done what we done, however dark it gets, it's alright. We pulled the trigger tight, we glitter up the night. We live to love, we live for like we are free. Like we're breathing fire, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire, and we can roll downtown to where we're from, and we can ride that dragon all night long, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. So we fuck and we fight, in our blood, in our bones, and we know it's alright. And we bark and we bite. We are all animals and we know that it's alright. We pulled the trigger tight. We glitter up the night. We live to love. We live like we are free. Like we're breathing fire. And we can be. Like we're breathing fire, and we can roll downtown to where we're from, and we can ride that dragon all night long, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire, like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire.
So that was the demo. And again, we only did up to the chorus because we, again, didn't really have time. We just thought we'd just concentrate on the little sections. And like I said, we didn't do as much in terms of the instrumentation because it was like all the sounds that he was using in there, I think were really cool. So we just focused on basically getting a little hook in the chorus. So I'll play.
We can run, chase after those sunsets. sunsets, it's alright. And we done what we done, however dark it gets, it's alright. We pulled the trigger tight, we glitter up the night. We live to love, we live for like we are free. Like we're breathing fire, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire, and we can roll downtown to where we're from, and we can ride that dragon all night long, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire.
So yeah, there's sort of like the high vocal parts in there, and I guess I'll play you the finished thing, and I'll go back and I'll play you the sort of our version compared to the final version of Alarm as well. But this is the final version of Breathing Fire, and the only real bits that were used of ours were those high vocal parts that you can hear in the chorus. So I'll try and point them out.
We can run, chase after those sunsets, it's alright. And we done what we done, however dark it gets, it's alright. We pulled the trigger tight, we glitter up the night. We live to love, we live for like we are free. Like we're breathing fire, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire, and we can roll downtown to where we're from, and we can ride that dragon all night long, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire.
A little bit there.
Like we're breathing fire. So we fuck and we fight, in our blood, in our bones, and we know it's alright. And we bark and we bite. We are all animals and we know that it's alright. We pulled the trigger tight, we glitter up the night. We live to love, we live like we are free. Like we're breathing fire, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire, and we can roll downtown to where we're from, and we can ride that dragon all night long, and we can be. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire. Like we're breathing fire.
So yeah, there was a few bits I think maybe in the verses, a couple of the simps, but the main thing was the hook. So what I was saying to you about trying to make sure that what you put in is confident and strong, and you sort of go with your gut, and the thing you're good at, you make sure you sort of use when you get put into a situation like this. It worked both times, because both the bits that the main focuses that we had on the day was to sort of get these hooks, and they've both been used. So I'll play you again just our version on the day of Alarm, and then I'll play you the original, the master.
You lay with me, you're shutting down. I smell her on you, I'm focused now. I know what's going on in your head, yeah. I know what's happened here in our bed, yeah. Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she calling, so what the fuck? I should've known that she stays a cheater. So here we are. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him? No. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the picture. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. And there goes the alarm.
So then the master was this, and you can sort of pick out some of the parts that we've done. Obviously that synth's back, so didn't quite win that battle.
You're shutting down, I smell her on you, I'm focused now. I know what's going on in your head, yeah. I know what's happened here in our bed, yeah. Your phone is buzzing, so pick it up. I know she calling, so what the fuck? I should've known that she stays a cheater. So here we are. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him? No. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the picture. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. There goes the alarm. I saw it coming, I let it go. My girls will tell me, I told you so. But I was so intrigued by your style, boy. I always been a sucker for a wild boy. I'm better than this, I know my worth. I might be getting what I deserve, but I ain't sticking around for the rerun. What's done is done. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him? No. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the picture. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. There goes the alarm. Now we got that now we got that there goes the alarm. Yeah. Bang, bang, two-shot fire. Man down, one fool, one liar. Ring, ring, trust gone missing. House on fire, house on fire. Bang, bang, two-shot fire. Man down, one fool, one liar. Ring, ring, trust gone missing. House on fire. And there goes the alarm, ringing in my head. Like somebody said, don't you trust him? No. Texting from his ex, what did you expect? Now you're lying here, knowing where he goes. Now we got that itch, yeah. Karma is a bitch, yeah. Same way that they come, that's the way they go. Now we got that itch, yeah. Rewinding the picture. There goes the alarm and the sirens go. There goes the alarm. Now we got that itch. There goes the alarm. There goes the alarm. Now we got that itch. There goes the alarm. There goes the alarm.
So yeah, you can see that the hook that we put in, There's a few things that change. Obviously, there's like a piano that comes in that we didn't even have the stem at the time. There's the little steel drum hook that has obviously been added onto our hook in the chorus and stuff. But there's a lot of like the rhythm that we put in on the chorus is stuck. A lot of the little sort of ear candy vocal parts are there underneath, especially from like the second verse. The structure's changed slightly, but all of this happened sort of like post us being there. So the whole process was like, it was quite intense, a couple of days, and a lot to sort of learn and a lot to sort of take on board in one go. But as soon as it was done, it was just sort of, that was it. You know, you sort of like had no real contact. Obviously, Anne-Marie wasn't there on the day. We've only met her since the song's come out. So it was all quite strange, quite a big feeling of, you're sort of like a very small cog in a giant wheel. And I think that for us, that was really different to anything that we'd ever done, because up to that point, everything that we'd done had been just us in a studio, or us with a writer and a singer, or, you know, and dealing with like one person at a record label or an A&R. So suddenly to sort of like come in, use your stuff, and then get taken out of the whole process was quite difficult to sort of get your head around, even though, you know, you obviously, in the back of our minds, I think we knew that maybe there was other people that were coming in 2 days after us to do exactly the same thing that they picked out and gone, well, we quite like the sound of their production, they can have a go as well. Like, you don't know what goes on. But it was quite weird, so you sort of get isolated from the whole thing, because we were just doing like additional production, and there was no guarantee that anything that we'd done on the day was going to be used. So as far as like the arrangement was, like when you, for most things, and for, you know, not just working on big stuff like that, is everyone goes to the studio together with sort of no business side attached to it. It's all, you go there to make some music, and once you've got in the studio, you don't want to think about anything else other than that, so you can write what you need to do. And if you come away with it, work on it, and it ends up being used by a record label or whatever, then that's the only time that sort of our manager or anyone else gets involved to sort of negotiate anything that needs to be negotiated, just so it takes the pressure off you not having to think about that at the time. So it wasn't until we got an email saying, can we negotiate your fee for the production and all the rest of it, that we sort of had an inkling that there was going to be something used. But all of that sort of side was taken on by our manager and his manager and her manager and the label. And so everyone then gets involved in like how much your fee is for the time you put into the thing, and then everyone sort of battles it out for the points that they want to get on the royalties. So obviously everyone gets a split, and you get all sorts of people trying to get in on that. But, you know, we were sort of just stay out of the way of that side most of the time. But for us, it was like a massive, massive opportunity. We were like really, really excited about just being involved at all. And when we got the email saying, you know, to sort of negotiate some of this stuff, we sort of thought maybe we might have a little bit, but we weren't necessarily expecting them to have used the whole chorus like they did. So for us, when we heard it, it was crazy. And like we didn't even get told it was going to be a single, I think, until I think it was released like the next week when we got the master back. So that was how far removed we ended up being from the actual production side from that point, which is obviously, you know, it's just how it is, and that's fine. Like Amir and Steve are unbelievable producers, so it was, you know, it was in good hands, and they did a wicked job. I guess like what we learned from it was that collaboration, like I said, when we haven't, up to that point, we haven't had anyone else. We've collaborated outside of the studio when you're networking with people and you're sort of trying to create your own path, but actually having people come into the studio with you and work on stuff together, that was quite a big lesson to have learned, because it's not often, apart from me and Shane having our own ideas that we sort of figure out between the two of us, it's a whole different thing when you've got a whole another set of ears from a different side of things coming in, and you've got to sort of let go of any ego, if you've got any, completely, and just sort of go with that there's no right or wrong way of doing anything, and no one's got a right or wrong idea, but in a collaboration, it's just the best idea always wins, rather than you know, you could come up with something that's great and you think is brilliant. It's not wrong. It might not be exactly right, but if someone's got a better idea, then you've got to back down and be able to sort of like for the good of what you're doing. And it's sort of like a lesson in removing yourself a bit from like the personal element you put into a track, being able to sort of listen to other people's ideas and opinions from sort of like a third person way of looking at things and just listen to it as a piece of music. That is quite an important lesson that we learned, just to sort of remove the personal elements that you put into it just to get to the best possible outcome for the whole thing. And when I was saying about Amir talking to us about being sort of like strong and confident in your ideas and simplifying everything down, making sure that any melodies and hooks or vocals that you've got are like paramount and they're just the main focus, and not trying to clutter everything out around it, allowing things to have space. That was a huge one for us, because when you listen back to, well, both of them really, but Alarm especially, that first verse, even like the sort of the pre-chorus in the first time round, it's like nothing to it, you know. It's just the synth and her vocal, and if you've got the right parts, you don't need 1,000,001 different bits doing all sorts. It's just about getting like the few correct things in there and making them work as well as they possibly can together, which just ends up making everything sound like crisp and really, you know, top quality. Because I mean, we're definitely guilty of it. You can end up muddying stuff up just because you just chuck a load of stuff in. But that was a huge one for us, because now I'm constantly reminding myself, if I can't hear it in the mix and it's not really doing anything, that if I take it away, if I don't miss it, then I've tried to like get rid of stuff like that and just move on. And also just sort of working in the negative space, having if everything's the pop stuff is like this and they've asked us to come in so that we can do it like that, having space in like working in the negative space can often be amazing, because everything that you're doing is going to be different to everyone else, and that's not to say it's going to work all the time, but it does give you a lot more space to do everything that you want. And sometimes it's just worth trying those bits, working in the negative space, doing the stuff, because if you do catch something that really does work, then you're going to be the only one that's done it, or the only one that's thought of it at least, and that's when you get really special stuff. And yeah, so it went on to obviously be the single. I think it got to number 16 in the chart. It went platinum all over the world pretty much, and I think it did 250 million Spotify streams and sold 2 million records. So we got a platinum disc at home and stuff, which is you know, unbelievable. I can sort of like end my music career now and be happy with that. I never thought I was going to end up in this position at all. So it was, you know, for us seeing it on TV when she was like performing it at Wembley and stuff, and like hearing your drum pattern, like the drummer playing the drum pattern you've programmed and stuff, was strange, and hearing it on the radio still was like, gives you a buzz. And it opened up a lot of doors for us, because from that point on we had that as like a credit on our musical CV, and yeah, that was like huge. So we ended up off the back of that getting signed to Relentless Records at Sony, and putting out our own tracks then. And they actually came to us with a brief of, they wanted us to do a cover of Let Me Love You by Mario, but again, it was the same sort of thing. He gave us the song and said, like, we want you to put your production on it, and it sort of worked with their brief. So we did exactly the same thing as we've done here, and just made sure we put exactly what we thought, didn't overthink anything, just did what came naturally. And then that ended up coming out. So that was almost like the second generation of Brunelle and where we're up to now, because it was like sort of a bit more pop than the first two instrumentals that we played before. And it was going to hopefully, you know, be given to a wider audience and on a bigger record label. And then I think from that point, once we got involved in working with a major record label and having success with Anne-Marie, it was the temptation was there to sort of chase what you thought everyone wanted, and trying to second guess what the industry wanted, or trying to overthink to sort of almost like design what you were writing to fit a certain Spotify playlist that you knew the record label wanted you to go onto, or a radio station that you thought if you got to the producer and it was the right type of music, it would work for them. And it was like a bit of a rabbit hole to go down, because that takes away what we learned from Amir when he said, just do what was right and what you thought was right at the time, and all the good stuff will come through. And I think now more than ever, looking towards the future and everything, how we've sort of gone back full circle basically, and just gone back to the basics and started to really do the lessons that I was just saying that we got taught by Amir. Because I think the way the music consumption has changed for people now so much, even since we were started in the industry to now, with streaming and all the rest of it. No one's really attached to music anymore. No one's like, when I was growing up, I'd buy a CD and it cost like £12, and I wanted me £12 worth, so I'd obviously I'd read the cover, read all the sleeves front to back. I knew every song and like who'd written everything, and I'd play it a lot. And I don't think everyone has that anymore. It's like everyone's attention spans are so much shorter nowadays. There's like almost too much choice, and the music industry churns out so much music every week that instead of seeing that as like a negative thing, we've sort of decided that that's actually a really amazing opportunity for any artist, because you can have like a really liberating way of putting your music out without having the restraints and trying to second guess and overthink what you think would work for everyone. Just doing what you think is right and going on a vibe, and being confident with it and strong with like your decision making. Actually, you can put stuff out that you love and you felt was cool at the time, knowing that if someone doesn't like it, then it doesn't really matter, because they'll be on to the next thing, because there's 1,000,001 other tracks that they could listen to, and you've already started something else. And you know what I mean? There's so much out there that it's just going to be a drop in the ocean. And it sounds a bit depressing when I say it like that, because you think, no, well, how are you ever going to make it to the top? But I think it's a really big opportunity for everyone nowadays to just do exactly what they want. And the stuff that is sort of designed in the negative space and has got a stamp that you can tell a producer's put a lot of like thought into, and it's got a vibe without being overthought, it will come through. Like the cream rises to the top always. And I think like working that way in the studio as well is when you work with like just going on a vibe rather than trying to overthink everything, you get like a more human feel to things. Like, you know, if you're in a band and you're in a practice room and you come up with something together and everything suddenly clicks and works together and you're like, that was really cool. When you're doing that sometimes with electronic music, I find you can end up overthinking and trying to over-perfect everything too much. And there's a lot of stuff you can watch online with, like I said, like tutorials and this is the right way to do it or that's the right way to do it. I think like sometimes it's quite good to just sort of forget about that, keep your mind like free from all that and just go with the vibe. Because otherwise, it does just get confusing and you can overthink things. So for productivity-wise as well, having a vibe and just going with it, doing what you think, finishing stuff off is like really, really helped. And just knowing that there's not as much pressure, like I said, with if people don't like it, so what? Who gives a shit? Like they might like the next one, and it's just loosening up with all that and knowing that there's only going to be a small percentage of your audience as well that are really going to be listening to your tracks as in depth as you are. I mean, there's probably going to be no one that listens to it as in depth as you do. And that was something that was quite difficult to sort of loosen up with. You know, you're always constantly overanalyzing everything, trying to think like you're always trying to impress your peers, I guess, in a way. And sometimes just doing what you think's right is key. And decision making as well for when you're coming up with stuff. If you can get to a point and you're like, that sounds good. Let's like even bouncing stuff down. So you got it to a point and you go, right, okay, that's that sound. Bounce that down and don't fiddle with it anymore. Because I've done it before when you can sit with a track and you listen to it over and over, and then like about a week later you think, well, is that any good anymore? Like I'm not even sure if that was like it's changed from where it started, and now I'm not. You know, you can overthink things. So for us, having that sort of freedom to just sort of do exactly what we want, stick to being strong and confident in the decisions that we're making at the time, working from a vibe, and just trusting our own process it's been key for us. Everything that we've done that has done well, or been successful, or been liked by a record label or whatever, it's always been because we've just trusted our gut and gone with what we thought, rather than when we've tried to sort of design or manufacture a piece of music to fit someone else's idea or brief, or what you think someone else's brief is for a Spotify playlist or whatever. It's not worked. So I think we've gone sort of full circle since that point with Amir, when we gave us all that advice, and then having the experience of our own, trying to please everyone or overthink things, and then just going back in a loop and looking out at it in the future for the way music's consumed now. There's not as much pressure for an artist to really sort of hit any brief. You know, you can just do what you think's right, and it'll all turn out all right as long as you put the hard work in. But yeah, I guess that's me pretty much done here. Hopefully there's some of the processes and stuff that I was going through that you could take on and maybe use in your own stuff, and just some of the lessons that we've learned. It was probably useful for you guys to hear from me, having had a bit of experience with it. But yeah, just keep working hard. Thanks. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed going through our creative process on Anne-Marie's track Alarm, and we'll see you soon.